Welcome to Investment Banking with Fox, a special mini-series on the Exponential Edge podcast. In these 5 episodes, I sit down with John Fox, an experienced boutique investment banker, to break down what investment banking really is, how companies raise capital, and why mergers and acquisitions matter. We'll also discuss the day in the life of an investment banker, IPOs, the skills needed to succeed, and where the industry is headed in the future. Whether you're just curious or considering a career in finance like myself, this series will give you a clear, no nonsense look at the world of investment banking. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of my new investment banking series with John Fox, VP at Technology Holdings. Hey, John, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing, Arya?
Awesome. Really excited to start this series with you. Something I've been meaning to do for a long time. And first off, just for our audience and for me as well, could you introduce yourself and your career, how you got into investment banking?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for giving me the honor and opportunity to be on your show. It's a privilege. Looking forward to the other series that we get to participate in and what you've accomplished so far in your podcast series. So very excited to be here. And yeah, happy to give a little bit of introduction about myself. I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And from there, having graduated, I double majored in accounting and finance. And so right after I graduated, I went to Deloitte and started in their audit practice. Did about 3 years there while I was studying to get my CPA, my certified public accounting license, for those that may not be as familiar with the credentials. But did that for about 3 years and then found myself interested in different avenues within Deloitte. So having noticed that, I shifted from audit into Deloitte's advisory practice. And within that practice, you more or less focus on the finance organization, or at least at the time. They're constantly shifting and revolving, or evolving, I should say, their practice and offerings. But when I was there, we focused primarily on what we would say would be finance transformation. So very much focused on the finance organization as a whole. So the clients I was put on, we helped them with external reporting, process improvements, the whole gamut of what the finance organization does for corporations and companies in general. So did that after my audit career for about 3 years. And then again, found myself looking for, I hate to use the phrase greener pastures because I had a great experience within that advisory practice, but wanting to get into the M&A world. And so from that, after I did a few years within the financial advisory services, I moved over to PwC's transaction advisory services. And what they do is they do the financial due diligence, the quality of earnings, and working capital analysis as part of M&A transactions. So did that for about 2 years. And then again, found myself interested, having, tasted the tip of the iceberg, so to call it, wanted to learn a little bit more about the valuation aspects that goes into businesses and part of the M&A transaction experience or process. So moved over to a boutique investment bank, worked with wonderful guys for a few years and did that. That was more tech focused. And did a few deals with them, and then found myself sort of bouncing around to a few other boutique banks, again, primarily focused on technology transactions. Spent a little bit of time within consumer, a little bit of time in facility services, but primarily my focus has been tech services and technology.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you for that. And
we're going to get into a little bit later the path to getting into investment banking. In my understanding, there's four paths, but also I'm a high school student, so my understanding might not be the
Yeah,
greatest. And one of those paths was doing your undergrad and then going into a big four Val company, which is what they called it. So it sounds like you worked in finance and then went into investment banking after your undergrad. So that's one of those pathways. Now let's get into what investment banking actually is. Let's start it off with just the definition and what are the core services that an investment bank provides?
sure. You know, some will say differently, but to boil down in simple terms, an investment bank does primarily two things in my mind: strategic financial advice and capital raising. And maybe to start with the capital raising, there's really two elements to that, which are the debt capital markets and then equity capital markets. So from a debt capital market standpoint, an investment bank will underwrite various bonds in an effort to raise money for corporations or companies. And then from an equity capital standpoint, an investment banker will seek to raise money through the primary or secondary markets of the equity world.
Mm-hmm. And
Uh,
just for our viewers and also my understanding, what is underwriting? What is that process?
so really, underwriting is essentially taking on and acquiring. So, for the instance of a call it a debt issuance, from an underwriting standpoint, an investment bank will typically acquire that bond, hold the risk, and then sell components of it uh, via syndicate to other banks, and then charge a fee for that sale. And
Okay,
then
so
from an
it's really
underwriting,
like an insurance policy.
essentially, yes. So they for a lot of times they're going to bear the risk of a lot of what they of the securities that they are selling. And then from an equity standpoint, very similar. They will acquire, especially in an IPO, will acquire the shares, and then when they go to market, they'll distribute them or sell them in the secondaries market, which is Nasdaq or the New York Stock Exchange to public investors.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. And so, why are these investment banks considered vital for these companies going through transactions, right? Why can't these companies just handle mergers and acquisitions by themselves, raising capital by themselves? Why do they need sort of a middleman or advisor to go through that process?
There's a lot of components to it. I think I'll start with a few, which is they investment banks create for what I think is a more efficient and honest market in terms of capital raising. And I say that because they have garnered market intelligence of various transactions. And so when you speak to a client, you're able to give them insight as to what has previously occurred, whether that be precedent transactions, what are publicly traded companies valued at. So you're able to give insight and guidance to your clients from that perspective. And then also, there's many companies can and are able to go out. A lot of companies that I've spoken to have been former investment bankers. Where we provide, a lot of value is that, a lot of the pain points that we've experienced with customers, or excuse me, our clients, is that the capital raising process is very time consuming. The due diligence, the Q of E, all the efforts that goes into the outreach, the investor outreach, very time consuming. And so, where investment bankers come to value in that regard is they take all that time and they allow these great companies to continue to do what they do best, which is run their business, continue with the sales efforts, so that they're not losing sales, they're not losing customer pipeline transactions, things like that. So, it's we provide value in that regard, where we take the stress and the burden for these CEOs and CFOs from having to do it themselves. And we do that, and we obviously facilitate it for a fee.
Mm-hmm. And that actually brings to mind a great example of what you just explained, which is Morgan Stanley helping Moderna during COVID raise capital for emergency vaccines, right? And letting them focus on the details of the vaccine without having to worry about
Correct.
other
Correct.
aspects.
Yeah. So that's a perfect example of what investment banks can bring in terms of value. And then, as I mentioned on some of the other points, which is that it's a lot of times banks, or excuse me, companies. This process of raising money or going through a merger or an acquisition is typically going to be one of the most important decisions that a CEO will make. And it's always helpful to have an advisor there, much as with anything in life. So it's always nice to have a sounding board that you can draw to, so that you can get the best and feel comfortable about the decision that you are embarking on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, so now that we discussed what an investment bank is and why they're so important in business transactions, now let's talk about what it takes to get into investment banking. Like I said, I'm a high school senior now, and I investment banking is definitely a career choice that I'm interested in and would want to get into. So this not only helps our viewers, but is also a little personal for me. So
Sure.
thank you for helping out with this as well. And so what does it take to get into investment banking when it comes to skills, target schools, all of that stuff?
Yeah, my path was a little bit more unorthodox and not as familiar with how people typically approach it. But obviously, with any career path, do well in school, particularly within mathematics. Science, involves a degree of math, but really, you want to just do well in school. Have from high school, obviously. Then, from that standpoint, obviously get into a good college, which all colleges or all universities always have great programs. And then in university, I would recommend focusing on, either mathematics, accounting, finance, economics, or engineering. Really focus primarily on degrees that are more math or quantitative focused. And then from that standpoint, you can talk about target schools, right? You have the big obvious names that most investment banks, particularly on the East Coast, will look to target. You can really get into investment banking from any university or college. You've seen, if you look at anybody's resumes, particularly on most of the investment bank websites, everybody comes from a broad collection of national universities. So it's not to say that you can't get in if you don't necessarily go to Harvard or Wharton. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit of it's easier from that regard. But the key focus that I would emphasize for individuals looking to get in is to really identify and start early. In that regard, I would say your sophomore year, you want to decide whether or not this is the career path for you, and then embark on various clubs, finance clubs, internships that would give you the introduction and access to the investment banking world. Nowadays, investment banks are recruiting earlier and earlier. The talent within universities is continuing to be growingly competitive. So you would want to get in, obviously talk with your school advisor, individuals within your finance department, look for ways to network early and gain access to banks, depending on where you go to school, either banks in that region, banks in that geography, and being able to get access to real life bankers, so to call it, sooner rather than later. Because, like I said, the process has started and will continue to start sooner. It used to be junior year. Now you're looking for internships and things like that for sophomores. But just attend career fairs. If there's ever an investment bank that is hosting a seminar or a introductory program, always try to get involved into something like that. Look to see if you're applying to colleges and it is something that is of particular interest. Look to see if there is a particular investment banking program offered at those universities. I know for a fact, I'm from Wisconsin, so I know the University of Wisconsin, for example, offers a specific investment banking program, which has allowed students from there to get placed into high caliber banks. And like I said, networking, getting involved early would be key items that I would emphasize for people interested.
So you would say having the most experience possible in internships is probably the most important thing to getting placed at an investment bank?
Yes, I think for the most part, like I said, my career was a little bit unordinary in comparison to the typical path that individuals or students would follow, because I got into investment banking after a few years of work experience. Now, if you want to get into investment banking right after school, it is trying to get an internship and network as soon as possible while you're at university. And that would start now, probably your sophomore year.
All right, great. Thank you. And you did go over this pretty much in your last answer, but I wanted to ask you, what are the first steps and what are the skills that someone looking to get into investment banking, whether it be in high school or their first few years of college, should look to acquire or have?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. There's a lot of skills that I would highlight. Obviously, like I said, the quantitative analysis, the math skills. I would obviously emphasize curiosity. Making sure that you're actually interested, and then your writing and communication and collaboration skills are all key items that I would highlight. Depending on the level of where obviously as a young banker, you're going to be doing the modeling, the pitch decks, the sims, which are the investor decks that you present. But within those decks, you're going to have to craft and narrate a compelling story to investors. And then, so from that standpoint, having a strong writing capability is key. And then also, you're going to have to assess the valuation and present financials, forecasted financials, historical. So having that math, that financial analysis capability and skill set is key. But then from a team setting, you're going to want to have strong communication, collaboration, teamwork skills, because you are going to be working most of the time long hours trying to put some of these materials together. So feeling comfortable in a setting where you can work together as a team, be able to raise issues effectively, efficiently, and collaborate well with team members is also going to be a key skill to have.
All right, great. Thank you so much. You did spoil a little bit of the day-to-day aspects and executions an investment banker has to go through, which will be the focus of our next episode.
Okay.
But again, thanks so much for joining us today, and looking forward to continuing the series with you. Thanks to our viewers.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
And tune in next time for Investment Banking with Fox.